So last time round I took a look back at my 5 favourite episodes of Space 1999's second season, and having done that it only seemed fair to visit the other end of the quality spectrum to cast an eye over 5 episodes that, well, fall a long way short of the quality bar. Before I do that, I just want to say I love this show, I absolutely love it, but there's no getting away from the fact that at times the second series' reputation for being just a little bit pants is well deserved.
Whew. What happened?
That said, if I'm about to rip apart an episode that's a particular favourite of yours, well, it's just my opinion. If you like these, then that's great, that's brilliant. I just don't have any great love for the 5 that I've chosen here. So, now that we've praised the good stuff, let's embrace the madness, celebrate the terrible, and applaud the sheer courage that brought these 5 god-awful episodes to our screens. If you're ready, let's throw on our brightly coloured space anoraks that we all now have for some reason, switch your stun gun to kill mode, and bring a bucket. We're going in. These are my 5 least favourite episodes of Space 1999 Series 2. Oh, God help me.
I guess his chances are 1,000,000,000 to 1.
Number 5. All That Glisters. While exploring a planet in search of yet another mineral vital to their life support system, Alpha's life support system seems about as fragile as an egg throughout the second series, the Alphans discover a sentient rock capable of possessing their minds in an attempt to steal their water supply and... No, do I really have to go on?
Somebody has to.
All That Glisters might almost reach so bad it's good status if it wasn't well documented that filming the episode was a thoroughly miserable experience for all concerned. The cast's problems with the script really show in their performances, and Martin Landau in particular looks ready to kill in pretty much every scene. Though to be fair, when you're given lines like this...
You've got a one-track mind and a stone-age skull!
Then an urge to destroy anyone you can get your hands on is understandable. One of the major criticisms I would make of Space 1999's second year as a whole is that the show was forced to sacrifice the unique identity it had forged over the course of the first season. Like it or loathe it, you'd struggle to find another series like it, in favour of becoming just another Star Trek clone. Here we have an episode that takes that to extremes, and at times feels like someone with only the vaguest memories of Star Trek drank a lot of bleach and then tried to write a script on the fumes before their insides dissolved. At times, they're not even trying to hide how blatantly they're stealing from that show.
I'm a doctor, John, not a miracle worker.
Ow, ow, ow. Though this is later made up for in an unintentionally hilarious exchange between Maya and Helena.
Tony's brain is still functioning, Helena.
It's one of the mysteries of life, Maya.
Okay, I know he's not the best security chief in sci-fi history, but really there's no need to be that cruel about the man. The story itself is nothing special and again feels very Star Trek. A misunderstood alien threatens the crew but is only doing so in order to survive, and in the end everything is sorted out to smiles all round. This week's alien is a living rock. God, just saying those words killed several brain cells I can ill afford to lose, which has often prompted people to compare this to Star Trek's The Devil in the Dark. But the gulf in quality between those two stories is so vast it covers more distance than the moon travelled in the entire series, and thus the comparison isn't really worth addressing. Star Trek's rock creature was killing to protect its young. Space 1999's was just feeling a little bit thirsty.
Fascinating.
Luckily, we also have Patrick Mower on hand, playing an Irish geologist who fancies himself a Texan cowboy, to such an extent that he goes down to the planet dressed as one. No, don't wind the video back, you heard right the first time, and I couldn't tell you why he's dressed like that, other than I guess someone thought it added some degree of personality or charm to his character. Unfortunately, that someone was a demented lunatic, since the character does nothing but the most stupid things throughout the entire story, and clearly his only reason for being there is to cause trouble in order to move the plot along.
You fool!
When your story requires you to bring in a guest character on the good guy's side just to act the fool in order to make something happen, a serious rewrite may be needed.
He's gonna do something stupid!
I particularly love the cast reactions whenever Moa says anything. They've clearly got no idea who he is or why he's there, and the expression in their faces is just, who are you and why the hell did we bring you along?
You too, huh?
Sadly, it seems like everyone left their brain on the moon this week, as scene after scene takes a previously intelligent reasoning character, and Tony too, and thoroughly lobotomizes them in order to serve the needs of the plot. These guys have faced down mad scientists and immortal psychopaths, fought alien battle fleets and a fire-breathing space octopus, flown through a black hole and come out the other side. But present them with a thirsty, immobile rock, and suddenly it's like they've never faced a situation more perilous than losing a pen down the back of the sofa. The design of the planet is similarly disappointing. Okay, compared to other shows of the time, it's not too bad, but Space 1999 had done much better before, and would do again. And what's worse is that this is the first exterior alien planet set we see this season. Compare this to Terra Nova, the first alien planet of the previous year, and there's a huge difference. I know this is meant to be a barren, dead planet, but something about the look of the place sadly reinforces the whole let's make it like Star Trek approach that was prevalent throughout the second year. Even the ending is corny. Having escaped the all-powerful rock, the Alphans take pity on it and decide to do something to the clouds to make it rain. Everyone smiles cheesily, the rock gurgles happily, and the audience just rolls its eyes and wonders why they didn't think to do this earlier and save us all a lot of time. Although you have to believe that the nutterback on Alpha who insisted on equipping all the Eagles with the supply of gold glitter, just in case, was feeling particularly smug that day. If I had to pick a single episode to sum up the bad points of the second year, it would probably be this one. It's not quite so bad it's good, but rather it has a unique badness all its own.
Red is dead! Red is dead!
And is really something to experience if you're in the mood for a thoroughly broken hour of sci-fi television.
Discussion ended!
Number 4. New Adam, New Eve. A being named Magus materialises in Command Center and declares himself to be God. The Alphans are understandably sceptical of this claim, so he takes John, Helena, Tony and Maya down to New Earth, a world that he's created. Finding themselves in the Garden of New Eden, the quartet learn they are to be the Adams and Eves of a new race of humans, but are even more startled when they learn that Magus's true ambitions are to use them in his experiments to discover the secrets of immortality. Also, giant lizards. He has some of those too, for some reason. Sci-fi series of yesteryear often trotted out the "Hi, I'm God, worship me or else" storyline when they had nothing else on the table, and unfortunately, Space 1999 was no exception. It's an idea that's doomed from the start. You know they're never really going to have found God, so it's pointless to drag this out for 50 minutes. Occasionally a decent version of the story pops up. The original Star Trek is a good example. But by and large, they're pretty rare, and in keeping with that tradition, the take we get on it here is fairly forgettable.
How dare you!
In fact, out of all the episodes of Space 1999, this is probably the one I remember the least about.
Why?
Working against this episode from the start is Guy Rolfe, an odd choice of actor for the would-be deity. A character trying to convince others that he's God needs a strong, compelling performance in order to make him the least bit plausible, but Rolfe just seems utterly disinterested throughout.
The more I learn, the less I know.
Meanwhile, Bernard Kay, seen here mentally composing a letter to his agent, probably would have been more than capable of delivering the strong performance needed, but instead gets buried under so much rubber and fur as one of Magus's failed experiments that he looks like the Michelin Man's hobo cousin. It's one of those unfortunate moments that occurs several times during the second series, and will occur actually several times through this video. You laugh as yet another unconvincing monster lumbers into view, then facepalm as you realise just who it is that's wearing that costume.
Right.
The story goes up a weird cul-de-sac when it turns out that Magus wants Maya to be John's mate and Helena Tony's, for reasons of genetics or something, and to that end makes them attracted to each other. Much kissing and touching and such ensues, but as you might expect, this attraction goes absolutely nowhere, will never be addressed again, nobody is particularly bothered by it, and to be honest, it just makes Magus look like a horny old goat indulging his fantasies.
It's very bad manners, and besides that, it's very bad psychology.
In story terms, I guess it is nice to see John paired off with Maya and Helena paired off with Tony, or at least it would be if we hadn't seen that several times this season already. This sequence does, however, provide the only moment of the episode that stands out for me, when John and Maya are talking about the nature of God and the latter casually remarks,
An interesting thing. We managed to find our God, the creator of this universe, to find that he had a God who created a bigger one.
It's such an offhand comment, and one that I would love to have seen receive more focus. Maya's people actually found their God? As in they just went looking one day and there he was? Where was he? What was he doing? What happened when they found him? Did he eventually find his God, or is he still out there somewhere looking? That seems like a story worth telling. This one's just going through the motions.
I'm sorry, I can't do any better.
Anyway, since he only appears during the day, the Alphans work out that Magus draws his power from sunlight. So they dig a really big hole, cover it up with branches, and wait for him to fall into it. Which he does. Worst God ever. Then the planet explodes and they just all go home, having learned nothing. Yes, the story doesn't so much end as it just stops. No thoughtful conclusion, no daft comedy moment back on Alpha. There's not even a decent last line.
Nope.
If this story had been made during the first season, it probably still wouldn't have been all that great, but at least they would have tried to actually engage with the concept. This just feels like a story being ticked off the stock sci-fi checklist.
Yep, we done that one now. What's next? Evil talking plants? Whoa, bring it on.
That's my impression of someone who worked on the show. Probably. I don't know. Number 3. The Rules of Luton. While scouting a new planet, the planet Luton, Koenig and Meyer run into trouble after picking a flower and eating some berries.
That is your crime. You killed members of our society.
It turns out that all vegetation on this planet, the aforementioned planet Luton, is sentient, so 3 trees, the judges of Luton, decide to punish them by setting the pair against a trio of alien criminals in a fight to the death. On the planet Luton. Okay, I know they pronounce it
Luton.
But you know, I know, we all know, it's Luton.
It's got to be.
Another episode with a bog-standard sci-fi plot. We've seen this in Star Trek, we've seen it in The Outer Limits, we'd see it again in Blake 7, but Space 1999 brings a dose of stupidity all its own. Written by Fred Freiberger, the first of 3 episodes he wrote under the pseudonym of Charles Woodgrove, it's another example of his vision the show should take, and as such it's impossible not to lay the blame for this one squarely at his door.
Nobody shared his dream.
Famously, Freiberger got the name of the planet when he saw it on a signpost and thought it sounded suitably alien. And when it was pointed out how ridiculous this would sound to British audiences, he just shrugged and carried on anyway. There's almost little point in discussing the episode any further. Everything you need to know about why it doesn't work is right there in that title. As you might expect, much of this episode is a runaround in a quarry, Koenig and Meyer trying to reason with and or outwit the 3 aliens sent to kill them. Much goofiness ensues, including Meyer turning herself into several different animals,
Maybe a lion or a tiger might even out the odds.
and very little time is spent on addressing how and why a planet's vegetation might suddenly gain intelligence and power and turn against all other forms of life. Or develop a legal system, come to that.
We are the judges of Luton.
Our 3 monsters aren't exactly the stuff of nightmares either, unless unconvincing costumes is a particular phobia of yours, in which case your fear is understandable. But as with the Beta Cloud, you just can't help but feel sorry for these 3 actors plodding aimlessly around this quarry. The only consolation is that it's not like there's anyone in any of those suits who went on to have a major career afterwards, anyone we need to feel embarrassed for or anything. Oh, I really hate you right now, episode. Yeah, you need to up your game considerably if we're to get back on speaking terms. And to be fair, it does. Around the halfway mark, the story, such as it has been, grinds to a complete halt, and Koenig and Meyer just sit around and talk for a bit. It's utterly unrelated to their situation, but it expands on the histories of both characters and their homeworlds in a way that this series had never done before and would never do again.
I had a wife.
Had?
Weren't there any wars on Saigon?
What was she like?
She was like... Helena.
It's so out of place that it literally feels like this one scene has teleported in from a completely different dimension. In fact, I bet that's what happened. I bet you anything Johnny Byrne broke into Fred Freiberger's office one day while he was out to lunch, or off scrutinising road signs for other interesting planet names, saw what was on the typewriter, threw up, then rattled off this scene in 5 minutes and snuck back out again. Fred never noticed, it went before the cameras untouched, and we ended up with one of the best scenes in the entire series. And it's in this episode. Okay, it's all padding, but it's really marvellous stuff.
You mean people killed people just because they were different from each other? That's disgusting.
Unfortunately, the plot eventually comes back in to ruin things, and we go back to the runaround, which builds to a predictably limp conclusion. Koenig does the whole "no, I won't kill my opponent" thing.
We're fools!
And the trees, rather than providing any moral judgment, just decide to let them go because it's the end of the episode and, you know, they've got to be hitting the road. Then it all ends on a comedy scene that feels more awkwardly uncomfortable than anything else, Like the cast had just had a huge row before the cameras rolled.
Oh, I thought it was a nice gesture.
I thought so too.
It's difficult to recommend skipping this one, because for one 5-minute scene it gets really properly brilliant, but the rest of it just isn't worth bothering with. We're not talking so bad it's good anymore, we're officially into so bad it's almost unwatchable territory here, and yet to not watch it would be to miss out on the single best scene of the entire season. All praise the inventor of the TV remote and its wonderful fast forward button. Oh, and they did later bring Roy Marsden back for a decent guest role near the end of the series, so weep not for Roy, even though I appreciate that seeing him in this, it's bloody difficult not to.
You promised you wouldn't do this.
Number 2, A Matter of Crap, A Matter of Balance.
Well, very funny.
As the moon approaches a new planet, young botanist Shermeen Williams is haunted by visions of a bald man in a yellow nappy and matching cape who asks for her help. Not help in finding him some pants, but help in freeing his people from an antimatter universe they've somehow become trapped in. Unfortunately, for every person brought back from the antimatter realm, a person from the world of matter must take their place. And Vindrus, the aforementioned nappy-wearing man, plans to use the Alphans for just that purpose. Shermeen is going along with this because she's stupid.
I hate you!
Pip and Jane Baker, a pair of writers whose names feel like they should always be followed with the words "bless 'em," offer up their only Space 1999 script here, and it's a stinker. The rest of the production plays down to that level accordingly, and the result is one of the most embarrassing instalments of the show. For starters, Shermeen, seen here having one of her regular temper tantrums, is a horrible, horrible character, and her presence on the base goes completely unexplained. This episode is set in 2004, and Shermeen is mentioned as having a teenage crush on Tony. So why was someone so young on the base when the moon left orbit 5 years earlier?
Look, why are you asking me all these questions? I haven't done anything wrong.
Exploring that wouldn't have been a bad idea, providing they gave the character a proper backstory and made her sympathetic. But it seems like they've just gone out of their way to make her as bratty as possible.
You think it's my fault?
I don't blame the late Lynn Frederick for this. She plays the character exactly as written, but that's the trouble. The character is a spoilt child, and much like Patrick Mower's character in All That Glisters, can be relied upon to make all the wrong choices for all the stupidest reasons all of the time. Except that somehow she appears to have wormed her way into Alpha's command structure for 1 week only.
What do you mean?
When she gets upset after the latest batch of Tony's beer, which she's been helping him with, doesn't go down too well, it's suggested that she might not be up to joining a landing party to explore the new planet. But Tony has concerns.
Oh, Shermeen's been on the first team a long time, John. She's gonna be very hurt.
Are they going where I think they're going with this?
You know I've been collecting specimens from every place we've been to.
They are. They really are. Okay, let's assume just for the sake of argument that the second series takes place in an entirely separate timeline to the first, which is a view I find myself favouring more and more as the years go by. Let's pretend that the first season never happened at all, and just look at the stories the second season has given us up to this point. You cannot possibly have this much disregard for your audience that you'll produce this character out of nowhere and then claim that she's been there the whole time. I can kind of believe characters like Alib or Yasko or Spencer appearing without explanation. It's a big moon base, it only makes sense that people would transfer between departments from time to time, especially over the 6 years that the events of the second series cover. But to literally go, oh yeah, Shermeen, she went with them every time they went down to a planet. Yeah, always. Doing botany things. You just never saw her. She was, I don't know, round the back of the Eagle or something. Is at best just stupid and at worst downright insulting.
I don't have to be a genius to understand that.
Think about how many times we've seen the Alphans racing to escape from a planet before it exploded. I don't remember them ever stopping to pick flowers for Shermeen's collection. But apparently I'm wrong.
John, where are you going? I've got to get Shermeen's plants.
In fact, when have these guys ever taken a botanist planetside ever? Last time we heard anything from Alpha's botany department, they were trying to telepathically communicate with plants and lost about 75% of their staff in the process. Oh, I think I just explained how Shermeen managed her rise to power. This is one of the problems that Martin Landau has mentioned having to fight against during the show's second year. The attitude from above of, no one will notice. That who cares attitude seems to sum up this entire episode, as Exhibit B for the prosecution clearly demonstrates. It's Nappy Man! Oh, poor Stuart Wilson. Another actor who managed against all odds to go on and have a long and successful career after this show dressed him up like a clown and broadcast the results across the world. Anyway, after several more tantrums and hysterics, Shameen tricks her way into joining a landing party to the planet, and once there she immediately wanders off alone because it's the stupidest option open to her. Discovering a temple, which conveniently they just randomly happen to land pretty much right next to, she finally meets Vindrus in person and agrees to go along with his plan to free his people from their antimatter world without consulting anyone, for some reason. Oh, and continuing the nobody'll notice attitude, the temple is guarded by the same monster who was in the previous week's episode.
I feel I've seen him before.
And actually the following week's episode as well, except here it has horns and a tongue, which I only just noticed. Oh, that's adorable. Luckily all this is resolved. I don't remember how exactly, but do you really care? Oh, no, wait, yes. Vindrus has Shameen steal a nuclear reactor from Alpha to power the turn antimatter people into matter machine, which is a thing they've somehow built because I don't know. But they cleverly set it to overload and send Vindrus and his powers back to antimatter hell. Meanwhile, science is just sitting this episode out entirely, weeping quietly to itself in a corner. Then it's back to Alpha in time to end the episode with yet another painful scene involving Tony's beer brewing antics, as he ponders the possibilities that antimatter hops might offer. Derp-de-derp. This is what passes for comedy, everybody.
It's not creative, no way.
And unless you count being banished back to whatever realm she came from, Shameen gets into absolutely no trouble despite nearly dooming herself and all her friends for... come to think of it, why did she want to help Vindrus anyway?
I don't know.
Oh, and the nuclear reactor prop went on to have a brief but memorable career in a far more credible slice of 70s sci-fi. And my number one least favourite episode of Space 1999 Series 2 is One Moment of Humanity. The moon passes within range of the planet Vega and is rendered powerless by the android inhabitants of that world. The androids then abduct Helena and Tony and put them through a series of tests designed to provoke anger, such as serving them nasty food and calling them names.
You decrepit hag.
The point of all this is to push the Alphans to the point where they might kill, because the androids want to kill their human creators, but they don't know how to because they don't have emotions, even though you don't really need emotions to be able to kill, but these idiots think you do, and will go to any lengths to push the Alphans to kill, and thereby learn the secret. Really ridiculous lengths, in fact. Despite the obvious changes that had taken place, the first 2 episodes of the second season were pretty good on the whole. Sadly, however, things took a major nosedive with this 3rd episode, the first sign that something had gone seriously wrong behind the scenes. Indeed, after this episode, 2 members of the cast, Xenia Merton and Anton Phillips, both of whom had appeared throughout the first season, left the show allegedly due to their significantly reduced screen time. But it really wouldn't surprise me if the quality of this episode played some part in aiding their decision. This isn't an episode I see on many worst lists, so it may come as a surprise to some to see it included here. The other episodes on this list, as well as several that were fully deserving of a place, such as Space Warp or The Tabor, are all pretty uncontroversial choices, so why would I place this at the top of the list?
I don't know why.
There are several reasons, one being that it's utterly boring, which was something the show was actively trying to avoid around this time, but one reason trumps all others. The premise is utterly nonsensical.
You foul-mouthed lying cretin.
So, androids want to kill their creators. Okay, with you so far. But because they lack the emotions of anger and aggression, they somehow can't do it, so they want to provoke the Alphans into showing them how it's done. Then they'll all just slap their foreheads as one as they realise how easy it is, and then get on with killing everybody. Nothing I can say can really do justice to how stupid an idea that is. Okay, for starters, how do they not possess even the most basic knowledge related to the causes of death in humans? Have none of their creators ever died of natural causes? And why couldn't they employ any number of non-violent methods of killing? For instance, they're on an ice planet. Couldn't they just prop all the doors open and let the humans freeze? How did these people even evolve on an ice planet anyway? Second, why do they need to feel in order to kill? It's perfectly possible to take a life without feeling anything at all. Not that I speak from experience or anything, well, except for that one time. But I'm sure there's plenty of people who've taken a life without feeling anything at all. Third, if the androids are incapable of feeling the emotions of anger and aggression, then what use is a demonstration of them going to be? True, they'll see how it looks, but it doesn't necessarily follow that they'll just magically acquire the feelings to go along with the actions. It's a huge plot problem that the story never quite overcomes, but the idiocy doesn't end there. We've only just started.
How about that?
One of the methods the androids employ to provoke the violence they need the Alphans to show them is to return Helena and Tony to a curiously deserted Alpha and allow the pair to become suspicious of each other. It turns out that this isn't really Alpha at all, just a replica, and that they're still on Vega. Now, I'm going to repeat that because it's worth repeating. These highly advanced, super intelligent androids have wasted God knows how much time and energy and resources building a perfect replica of Moonbase Alpha, the entire base right down to the finest detail, all because they can't figure out how to kill. Where the hell would they even get the resources to build all that on a planet that's a frozen wasteland anyway? As a side note, this is yet another example of Space 1999 stealing from Star Trek, in this case the episode The Mark of Gideon, where Captain Kirk found himself on a perfect duplicate of the Enterprise built by aliens for equally pointless reasons. The only difference is that the idea was somehow even stupider in that episode, because the aliens in question lived on a planet suffering extreme overpopulation, as in so much you literally can't move at all, and yet they still found enough room and materials to build an entire replica starship. Aliens, they're just funny like that.
You mean that we're going mad?
Anyway, once this insanely convoluted plan falls apart, the androids then take the insultingly easy approach and raid Alpha's library looking for useful literature, eventually settling on Shakespeare and in particular Julius Caesar.
They murdered Julius Caesar. Why?
It was a political act.
And you on Alpha are not political?
No, we're not.
Then we do not want Julius Caesar.
How broken is the programming of these goddamn androids that they can't figure out human plus knife in back equals very dead? At this point you could literally hand these morons a book called 101 Ways to Kill Pesky Humans and they'd just use it to prop up a table. Also, at one point Alan shoots the android lady in the head while she's scouring the library, which would seem to be pretty much the display of violence that the androids were hoping for, but she doesn't notice. Dear God, what is happening? Anyway, as you might expect, this all culminates in a dance number.
Logical.
Really? No, really, that's the climax of the episode. Dancing. They even got Lionel Blair in to choreograph the whole thing. I'm still not joking, his name's there on the credits, look. They must have spent hours and hours arranging this, and not once did it cross anyone's minds that they were producing the most ridiculous thing of their entire careers. You see, after the murder of Julius Caesar went completely over their heads, the androids settled on using Othello as a template for their next wacky plan, which involves having Mr. Android do a seductive dance with Helena right in front of John, in the hope that it'll drive him mad enough with jealousy to kill. As you'd expect, Helena resists that. Oh, no, wait, she just seems to go along with the whole mad scheme, and actually gets quite into the let's make my boyfriend jealous enough to kill somebody dance. You know what this is like? This is like one of those old black and white sci-fi movies from the 50s where the rugged all-American space adventurers get into their rocket ship and fly to a planet populated entirely by beautiful young women who then dance interminably for 20 minutes to welcome the strangers to their world. Only 25 years later and played dead straight in a mainstream television drama that was broadcast all over the world to millions of people. Oh dear.
I don't know how much longer I can take this.
And it just doesn't stop. The only character doing anything constructive throughout all this is Maya, who sneaks away to discover the energy source powering the computer that controls the androids in an attempt to disable it. Only what she discovers beggars belief.
The computer's a fail-safe device. If the energy source is disturbed, the whole planet explodes.
What? That's, well, that's a little on the daft side, surely. A burglar alarm operating on the scorched earth policy doesn't seem to be that great an investment. How the hell do you think they sold it to them? And this alarm is guaranteed to protect our property from harm, is it? Oh well, yes and no. It will ensure that any intruder is promptly dealt with. The only downside is that it achieves this by blowing the intruder, yourself, your home, and your entire planet to smithereens. Excellent, excellent. Where do we sign? Koenig decides he's had enough of all this and promptly introduces his fist to Zaal's face, which is apparently the demonstration of emotion-induced violence that the androids were searching for in order to learn how to kill. Because if you want to learn how to kill someone, just seeing a punch being thrown is apparently much more instructional than reading about a guy getting stabbed multiple times. Mr. Android then suffers a spontaneous crisis of conscience, the Alphans use it to prevent him from killing them all, and the resulting emotional seizure thingy causes him to collapse. Him and all the other androids on Vega. Why? Because androids are like Christmas tree lights, apparently. If one goes out, they all do. No, I'm not kidding, that's exactly how they explain it in the episode.
Like little Christmas tree lights, if one of them went out, they all did.
There you see? That's science. It's difficult to suggest any easy fixes that would have improved this episode since so many of its problems are tied in with the basic premise. But one change I would make: how much more interesting would the story have been if it had opened with Tony and Helena finding themselves alone on Alpha, and genuinely not knowing about the androids or anything else that was happening? As it is, we're clued in pretty early to the whole fake Alpha thing, so watching the pair catch up to us is rather monotonous. Oh, and the episode ends with the Alphans still stranded on Vega, and with the androids who brought them all there apparently disabled, they are presumably unable to get home again. I don't know, I guess they just walk back or something.